Hey there, welcome back to the Sprinkle Factory. I'm Tony, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up and use your candy topper for your sprinkle tray with Eddie. But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you go ahead and first calibrate your sprinkle tray with Eddie using our calibration videos for the sprinkle tray. Having Eddie already calibrated to your sprinkle tray is going to make this process super quick. If you haven't already done so, you can calibrate your sprinkle tray at thesprinklepactory.com/thesprinkletray. Additionally, you're going to want to download these candy topper calibration files so you can follow along with this video. You can download them at thesprinklepactory.com/candy topper. Throughout this video, I'm going to show you how to fine-tune your Eddie's calibration to your sprinkle tray candy topper, test your first candy design with your sprinkle tray candy topper, and print your first set of candies, along with sharing some tips and tricks to ensure that you have the best experience printing candies with Eddie. With that said, let's go ahead and dive in. Since we're working with Windows today, I went ahead and opened up the Bartender program, and the first thing I'll need to do is open up a sprinkle tray page, which you may already have a template saved, but I'm going to go ahead and start fresh just in case you don't. So let's go to File, New, and then we're just going to create a blank template. We already have Eddie set as the default printer, specify custom, and then here is where we're going to set our page size to 4.5 for 4.5 to represent our sprinkle tray. As we always do, we'll hit next, full page media, and do a double check right here that both our page size and template size are both set to 4.5 by 4.5. So we're good to go. We're going to hit finish. And now we have our sprinkle tray page and template set up. Then I'm going to use the cactus icon up here in the toolbar to bring in my calibration image that I've already downloaded. I'm going to choose this first one that has the dark red circles and the plus or minuses on each side. I'll then click on the page to place the image, and it's going to bring it in here small. So I need to resize this so it is the full size of the page. So I could either drag it here with these three handles, and I can see when it hits that 4.5 by 4.5 here at the bottom. Or I can resize it by right-clicking on the image and selecting Properties. And then here in the Size tab, I can choose my size. So I'll select Size, and then I can put the width and height to 4.5 by 4.5 so it fills our page, and it's the correct size for print. Fun little side fact here. If your Windows allows, you may be able to actually just drag this image in from your folder and it will bring it in at the correct size. However, some Windows do not allow that. So I always show how to size it manually just in case. Then of course, we'll want to center it perfectly. So we'll use these tools here to horizontally and vertically center it perfectly. And our file is ready to print on our sprinkle tray. Before we hit print though, this is a great time to check our print settings. So let's go ahead and jump into the Eddie Print Hub and then to the Alignment tab. And on this page, of course, we will be adjusting the horizontal and the vertical offsets to fine-tune our candy topper calibration, just like the calibration procedure we used for calibrating your sprinkle tray. But before we do that, let's take a quick pause and double check our settings, specifically this cookie centering scan option here at the top. We want to make sure it is not checked. Because we're using our sprinkle tray and calibrating process for alignment, we don't want Eddie to scan in the cookie or the tray. Then let's navigate to this printer settings tab, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at a few of our advanced settings that may affect your candy topper. First, let's talk about the feed speed. A lot of users I find don't know that they can actually slow down that feed speed. And this may come in handy when you're printing things like candies because they're just a little less jiggly. I haven't had any issues using the default speed. However, some users report back to us that they slow it down and find that they have better results. Next is the cookie lift offset, which we want set to 0. I feel like I could probably do a whole video on this alone because it is quite a controversial topic in the Eddie community. But let me just skip to the point and say it causes more harm than good. Trust me, just set this guy at 0. And lastly, we have this newer option, which is scan large print area for multiple objects. This setting also causes a lot of confusion, so let's clear that up. What this setting does is it brings your tray back and forth horizontally just before print, and it does a few vertical scans so it can check for multiple points of height on the tray. This comes in particularly handy when you're printing multiple cookies or a bunch of candies on one tray, as opposed to how it normally scans, which is just one height scan near the middle. I've also heard a lot of back and forth on this setting. Some users seem to like it and some don't. I have been using it for several weeks now, printing on tons of candies, and I haven't had any issue. It seems to be working just fine for me. So we'll go ahead and say this setting is up to you. You may want to try it with or without, but at least you know now what that setting does, and you can always go back and turn it off or on accordingly. Now we've made sure our settings are correct, so we're going to go ahead and pop back into Bartender and get this calibration image printed. And once in Bartender, I just need to go ahead and select File and Print. And then I can confirm my copies are at 1. And let's go into the document properties and make sure everything is good. And we can see my page size is correct. And as far as the quality or color matching or saturation goes, it doesn't really matter. This is a test print. You can turn it down if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is. So let's go ahead and send this to Mr. Eddie. And then we're going to hop on over to Eddie where I have placed my sprinkle tray on, and I've hit load to print the image directly onto the tray. And let's go ahead and speed things up a bit here. Much better, Eddie. Now you've probably already guessed at this point, but what we're hoping for is these circles that we've printed on the tray to line up with the circles on the candy topper. So I'm going to go ahead and place this over our calibration print. And as you can see, mine is almost perfect as it is. This is why I highly recommend to calibrate your Eddie to your sprinkle tray before doing your candy topper setup, because you should be pretty close already with alignment. However, if you find that you do need to make some offset adjustments to fine tune your print to your candy topper, you can do so in the Eddie config, following the same process we used to calibrate your sprinkle tray by adjusting the offsets here in the alignment tab, using the pluses and minuses printed on the tray to help guide your adjustments. I do recommend rinsing off your tray in between test adjustment prints here, so that way you can get a nice clean image. And I also recommend taking note of your offsets if you do need to adjust them for your candy topper, so you can go back and forth as needed in the future. Once you're happy with your candy topper alignment and your settings have been checked, we're going to go ahead and print one last alignment image, and that is going to be this candy topper star calibration, which is going to give us one last visual confirmation that we are happy with how our candy topper is lined up before we actually test print on some candies. Once again, I'm just resizing this so it fits our full page of 4.5 by 4.5. I am doing it by the little handles here this time. I like to mix it up. And then let's go ahead and center it. And we're ready to send it to print just like this. So let's go ahead and go up here and select File and Print again. And once again, we have copies. I'm just going to confirm my document settings. Again, I'm not concerned about the settings. So let's go ahead and send this to Mr. Eddie. And we're back to Eddie. So we're going to go ahead and place our sprinkle tray and hit load. And once again, Eddie's going to print our alignment image directly onto our tray. Once our alignment stars have been printed, I'm going to go ahead and lay the candy topper back on top of the sprinkle tray. And I'm just going to give it a visual look over and see if I'm happy with how my stars look in reference to the candy topper circles. If you're not happy at this point, you can always back up a step and adjust those offsets a little more. It's way easier and less frustrating to adjust it here without anything on the tray than wasting candies. Now that I'm happy with my alignment, it's time to go ahead and do our very first print with the candy topper using real candies. As you can see, I've loosely loaded up one tray with candies. I purposefully didn't worry about how lined up they were in the candy topper because now I can show you my tips and tricks on how I get them nice and tidy. I typically don't do this process while the tray is on Eddie. It's typically off to the side and then I bring it over. However, the camera's set up here, so this is how we're going to do it for today. Now, working with a candy tray can be a little bit tedious, so that's why we include this cute little stick with your candy toppers, so you can flip over or wiggle your candies into place. I'm actually reusing Hershey's that I've previously printed on, as you can see, but I wanted to demonstrate the flipping process because this is really important typically if you're printing with M&Ms and you want to flip over to the plain side, or you just need to wiggle one into its place a little better. This stick comes in super handy. Once your candies are all flipped to the right side, you're going to want to make sure they're nice and lined up to get the best results. My favorite way to do this is actually taking a second candy topper and laying it over top and then wiggling it until the sides are all lined up and they are nice and seated. Not only are they lined up well, but you can transport them much easier this way. As I said before, I typically do this off to the side, so I'll actually line them up and bring them over to my Eddie just like this, removing the candy topper just before printing. Then I'll place it back on after printing and take it back to my drying station. Now that we've calibrated and set up our candy topper, it's definitely time to print on some candies. So I went ahead and sent our star file to Eddie, and all we have to do is press load here and he's gonna get to work. The one thing I didn't get a chance to talk about is making sure Eddie has a fresh calibration before you get started. When you get to this point, if Eddie has been sitting around, maybe you're following along with this video and he hasn't printed in a while, my recommendation is before printing your candies is to go ahead and power Eddie off, remove the tray off of the tongue cover, and then power Eddie back on. Let him get a fresh calibration with nothing but the sprinkle tray tongue cover right before you print. This will ensure that he has the correct height and you're not going to send candies flying across the room as the result of an improper calibration. And just like that, Eddie's already done printing our stars onto our candy, and I'm going to go ahead and place my second candy topper back over my printed candies if the image allows, and I'm going to wiggle them into place here. There we go. And this is how I transport them back to my drying tray. Again, this is optional, but it definitely helps me from dropping candies everywhere because these guys are wiggly. And that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you're super excited to try out printing your candies with your sprinkle tray candy topper.